Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Unbreakable Woman's Journey, where we talk about leadership, resilience, and real stories behind building something meaningful when you didn't start with a manual. Over the last few episodes, I've been walking through the early terrain of leadership as I actually lived it. First, the shock of saying yes before I felt ready. Then came the question that steadied me when everything felt uncertain. What is the next best responsible step? That was the question. After that, I had to learn how to slow down long enough to understand the system before trying to improve it. Most recently, we talked about why strong systems protect people instead of draining them. At some point, though, every new leader runs into a different kind of challenge. The system may be clearer, the workflow may be starting to make sense. You may finally feel like you can see the moving parts of the clinic without your brain catching on fire every 5 minutes. And then you remember something. You still need to lead people. That part has a very particular pressure on it. The room is polite, but not fully with you yet. Someone is comparing you to the last manager in their head. Somebody else is maybe testing how easily you get rattled. And another one may be waiting to see whether you unfold under pressure. And another one is quietly deciding whether your title means anything at all. Nobody announces that out loud, of course. That would be too convenient. Instead, it shows up in tone, in side comments, or in the little pause after you say something, in the way room can get tight without anyone technically doing anything wrong. If you've ever had stepped into a clinic manager role and felt like the team was not only listening to you but also measuring you, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. That part is not imaginary. It is so real, it's crazy. Early in my own leadership journey, there was a nurse who had been working with the doctor in the clinic for years before I stepped into the manager role. She knew the clinic, she knew the doctor, she knew the patient, she knew the flow. She had a long history with the clinic, and that's something I simply did not have. So when I suddenly became the person meeting with the doctor regarding operations, that shift did not land lightly with her. She noticed right away that the owner, the doctor, is spending more time with me on clinic matters. And from her point of view, that meant something. She has had seniority, had familiarity, and had a history in the room. So when I became the person sitting in those conversations, it disrupted what she thought the order of things should be. The tension didn't come through one dramatic big blow up. It came in smaller, sharper moments. I would say something and she would respond with a comment that carried resistance instead of curiosity. Every now and then, I'd get some version of, you know, um, that's not how we do things here. And that's not how we've done it. Which, if you've ever been in leadership, you know it's not really about the sentence itself. It's about the message underneath that sentence. What she was really saying was, I'm not sure I can accept your authority yet. That is a very uncomfortable thing to feel in the room, especially when you still new enough to be questioning yourself also. And let me tell you, being questioned when you already have your own internal committee doing background commentary is not for the weak. Your outer face is trying to stay calm while your inner world is saying, "Excuse me, did you just really say that?" Followed by immediately by, "Wait, am I handling this wrong?" And then layered on top of that, "Don't get weird, don't get weird, don't get weird." That is the moment where a lot of new leaders start overperforming. One person gets louder, another one explains way too much, someone else tries to win the room with perfect logic. Now, a different leader swings in the opposite direction and gets so cautious, the clarity disappears altogether. Of course, none of those responses build trust. What I learned over the years and over time is that authority does not grow because you found the perfect comeback. It does not deepen because you made one impressive speech one time. It becomes believable when people experience your leadership as steady. I did not have the language at the time, but I was learning it in real time. So when that nurse pushed back, I did my best not to overpower her. I did not want to embarrass her, and I did not want to spiral into a long explanation just to prove I belong there. Instead, I acknowledged her history. I let her know that I understand she had helped shape the rhythm of the clinic for years up to this point. Then I explained that the doctor wanted to make a shift, not because we're trying to tear down everything that existed prior to me walking into the clinic, but because we were trying to improve the places where the clinic kept getting stuck. My point was, where's the chokehold? How can we fix it? And that mattered. What also helped was that the way I framed change itself. I made it clear that we did not have to treat every adjustment like a permanent decree handed down from heaven with a medical billing code attached to it. I said things like, we could test things. We could try a better approach. And I used a lot of what if scenarios. And we could strengthen the clinic without acting like one experiment was going to define us for the next 1,000 years. That conversation helped, but it did not instantly settle the room. And I want to say that plainly because I think newer leaders need the truth more than they need a polished story. One calm conversation does not suddenly erase resistance. One wise response does not make everyone trust you by Tuesday. Her comments continued for a while, little jabs here and there. But the undercurrent stayed alive. Then another layer got added when she found out the doctor started meeting with me on Saturday mornings at a diner. He knew I had no management background, and he was trying to help me understand the business side of the clinic and what kind of support I needed and that could help me. But from her perspective, that probably confirmed that what she already felt. That influence was shifting and her place in the structure felt less secure than it used to. Once I saw that clearly, something changed inside of me. I stopped needing every tense moment to tell me whether I was succeeding or whether I was failing. Now, that sounds simple when I say it now, but it was a real shift. Up to that point, I think part of me was still reading every reaction as a verdict. If someone pushed back, it felt like evidence. And if someone looked skeptical, to me, it looked like evidence that I wasn't doing the right thing. Now, if the room stayed quiet, that also felt like an evidence. Like, what did I say now? What did I do wrong? And then when you live that way, your leadership gets built on emotional weather instead of solid ground. I had to stop doing that. What mattered more was whether I could stay grounded in the role even while trust was still being formed. That became the work. Could I stay calm when I felt challenged? Could I keep my tone clean without becoming timid and easily intimidated? And could I follow through without swinging between overexplaining and the extreme shutting down? Could I stay anchored to the mission of the clinic instead of getting dragged into emotional current every single moment, every side eye, every look, every sigh? That is how authority started to grow in me. Not because everyone agreed with me quickly, not because I won some big confrontation, and definitely not because I suddenly turned into a bold, polished executive with a briefcase, a graph, and a dramatic soundtrack following me through the hallway. The growth came through steadiness. People started seeing that I did not change direction every time someone questioned me. Now they started noticing that my words and my follow through match. There was a congruency between what I said and what I did. And of course, over time, they learned that my leadership was not built on my mood, insecurity, or the need to prove myself in every interaction. That is what made it believable. I think this matters a lot for compassionate leaders because people-centered women often feel the pressure to smooth everything over too quickly. You want the room to feel okay right away. You want the tension to dissolve, and you want people to feel seen and respected. All of that is good, of course. Who doesn't want that? But the problem starts when your need for immediate harmony becomes stronger than your commitment to clear leadership. That is where things get slippery. If you trade clarity for comfort too often, the room may feel better in a short term, but the trust gets weaker over time. People can feel when you are seeking relief instead of leading. Leadership asks for something steadier than that. You don't need to become harsh, and you do not need to dominate the room. You do not need to act like the toughest person in the building just because you have a title. What you do need is a center of gravity that is stronger. You have to know your plumb line, and um, and that clarity needs to be stronger. Then you need to be validated quickly. That nurse taught me that, not because she was trying to mentor me, but because her resistance exposed exactly what needed to grow inside of me. I had to stop reaching for instant reassurance and start becoming more settled in the role I had already been given. That is not glamorous work. It is quiet work and it is hard work. But quiet work is often the kind that lasts. So if you are newer clinic manager and your team still feels like watchful, hesitant, skeptical, and not fully bought in, I want you to hear something very clearly. That doesn't mean you are behind, and it means trust is still forming. There is nothing unusual about that. The mistake would be trying to rush that process by performing your authority instead of embodying your authority. Those are two different things. One looks for quick proof, and the other one allows credibility to build over repeated experience. The other one wants to impress the room. The other one becomes dependable enough that the room can gradually relax into trust. That is a much steadier way to lead. Now, let me make this practical because I never want to leave you with only with a story. When someone on your team pushes back, questions you sideways, or quietly test the edges of your authority, I want you to run the moment through one simple leadership filter. The question is, do I need to prove something right now, or do I need to stay steady? Let me repeat that. Do I need to prove something right now, or do I need to remain steady? That filter can save you from a lot of unnecessary headaches. If the urge to prove yourself is driving the moment, you will be tempted to say more than what you need to say. Defend things that do not need defending, or answer emotion with more emotion. I'm sure you've been there. If steadiness is leading the moment, your response will usually get cleaner. Sometimes that means saying less, and other times it may mean circling back later, hitting the pause button, or it means holding your tone and following through without arguing in real time. And of course, other times it means letting the room feel awkward for a minute instead of rushing in to rescue everyone from discomfort. That is leadership too. And that is the thread that I want you to carry into the week. Authority grows steady. It's not flashy, and authority doesn't grow all at once. Not because everybody instantly approves of you. It becomes believable when your leadership is stable enough to be trusted. Remember to use this as your filter question. Do I need to prove something right now, or do I need to stay steady? Remember that. Until next time, my friends, stand and deliver on steadiness. Aloha.